begin with, I'd like to say thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you driving all the way up here and
Yeah.
doing this because it's definitely a learning experience for myself to get to know other people and then also to show other people that honestly there's a lot of people out there that care and are
Mm,
trying to make a difference any way that they can. And that's what this podcast is about, you know?
that's cool.
Yeah, it's simple, and I love meeting new people and I love doing this and sharing this interaction. So, to begin with, I like to usually let people kind of introduce themselves a little bit and then like what they do and kind of why they're here and all that kind of stuff. So, if you want to jump into that, we can.
Sure, sure.
All right.
I don't know exactly the why I'm here,
Yeah,
in terms
of
of
course,
like
neither do
existential,
I.
but yeah, I don't know. What's my name? My name's Makaio Honor. I am currently a student of acupuncture and herbal medicine. I spent some time growing up in Washington State. I was a teacher beforehand, special ed, and I did some substitute teaching. And I was also a college professor for a little while.
Oh.
Um, I decided after some time up in Washington that I was kind of needed a change in my life, so I kind of sold everything, bought a bus, converted it out, traveled around for a few years, landed in Oregon, and then from Oregon came down here to start school. And so that's been, I came down in 2020, and so I've been doing that for 4 years now. And still have about year left, yearish left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, some like key or like big things that I think I've done for my life was I'm the first person I think on record to take a stand-up paddleboard down the entire length of the Columbia River.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then a couple years later, I did the Washington section of the Pacific Crest Trail. So there's like some, I think, like formative experiences, I guess, for my life. Aside from just like living on the bus, and then also preparing to be a dad. So
that's a big one.
yeah, it's definitely big.
Yeah, it's funny because we all like I don't know you, but like we already have so much in common. Like I can tell you stories of I love paddleboarding. By the way, it's like I gave up snowboarding because it was like one of something I absolutely loved, but I always like pushed it to the extreme. And becoming a dad, it was one of the things where I'm like, okay, like if I break an arm or something worse, can I still continue to provide for my family? And I'm like, no, like I can't afford to do that. Like when you're younger, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go break a leg, and then what I have a cast and I go to school or whatever. But it was one of those like life changing moments where I was like, oh, what do I have to? I should probably give this up. But then I'm like, I don't like giving that up energetically because I loved it so much. So for me, I was like, I'm gonna transition into something else, and for me, it was paddleboarding. I absolutely fell in love with it. So it's so cool to hear that you did something like that because it's like such a meditative strength like combination thing that you do, so it's really cool to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely a pretty like profound experience I think in my life. I was 22, turning 23 that summer. It was about 50 days on the water, 60 days for the entire trip. Had never done any like camping or anything, or like any like solo kind of camping like that in my life. I maybe done like maybe a one backpacking trip at that point, like an overnight camping, but had never like when I set out on the river, I had never fully set up my tent, and I'd never even used my stove until like that first day on the river.
So you like stopped and camped, or like you'd stop and then keep on going, and then like it's that kind of thing. So like everything was on your board, too. Wow, that must have been a picking and choosing moment of like what's too heavy or light or like all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
that's cool.
I would it took me about like 9 months to plan it, and I like dehydrated about half my food, and then I like sourced the other half of my food, and I prepped all my food kind of in advance. And I kind of like estimated how many days I thought it would take me to get to certain sections, and then I had mail drop points for all my food, and then I had help getting around like the dams and stuff like
That's
that.
amazing. That sounds so much fun. I've thought about doing something like that, or like at least entering like a distance contest or something like that. But yeah, making the time, obviously, as you know, like 9 months in the planning to do something like that, and then setting out to do it, and then 50 days,
Yeah.
right? I mean, who has 50 days to just be like, hey, see everybody, kind of thing. That's a lot of prepping too, for sure. But I think from what I remember, speaking with you, or at least like the little bio that I got from Dr. Tasha. Shout out to Dr. Tasha for also making this happen. Thank you, thank you. Um, she also said that you do like tonal attuning. Is that correct? Or like sound therapy?
The sound therapy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we've been doing some sound together. I play the gong.
Mm-hmm.
I also have like a handful of flutes that I play.
Oh, amazing.
I have like a specific flute called the Anato,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like a 3-chambered flute.
Okay.
Made out of clay.
It's kind of like this guy.
Yeah, kind of like that. But it's got like 3 kind of like udders almost. And you just kind of play it, and it kind of has like a chorus, like pipe organ type sound almost.
I'm not too familiar with it. I'd definitely like to check it out. I've never done. I mean, like I do tonal like arranging for myself sometimes. But, like I feel like I really needed to get myself back in sync with like. I do like parts therapy with myself, and then also I kind of sync that up with some sound. Sometimes when I know that like there's parts of myself that I can feel like out of alignment, like internally, so I definitely relate to that. But I've never been to like something set up where like people are just doing that. I've had so many friends and family, go and have that wonderful experience. But for me, I'm always like playing instruments and stuff myself. So I'm like, I don't really I'm doing that anyway. Like I love singing, like I love making music or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, to me, like anytime I sing, or it's the same thing for me. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know if I really need that, but I've had certain people go and experience it where they're like, even musicians go and experience something like that, and the takeaway was just amazing. So.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think that sitting with other people and like seeing, like just feeling the vibrations and like hearing the sounds that are made from other people, you just kind of like your body absorbs that, you know, and those vibrations, your cells feel them to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And it's just there. It's so powerful to just sit and just like listen to sounds that I don't know nature man can create, and like allow yourself to just kind of zone out for a period of time, and then to come back and just be like, oh, you know, this is life. I'm in the world.
Yeah. For me, like one of the things I'm so passionate about is live music, because it's not just like the music itself; it's the everybody around you syncing up together. And I think that in a way is like tonal attunement. You're all vibrating, and then you're all kind of vibrating on that same level, and then you're all next to each other. You're just tuning forks all next to each other, so like you're all getting to that point, and then you're all like resonating the same frequency, and you're feeling everybody around you, or at least I do. And I've had those moments, like those holy moments where like everybody's right there at the same point, and then you feel so connected to the other person where there's no, you cross the barriers of like, oh, like you look like this, or this is your perspective, or you're so in that moment where like you're whole with everybody, and you're like, oh, there's no separation, and music does that, to people. And I love going to concerts and festivals where like, when people leave the like festival, you just see them so different, and like people are hugging and crying and everything like that, so I love those moments. That's why music's so beautiful to me, and I wish that more people would like come to understand the power of music and tuning to different frequencies and everything. So that's beautiful. How'd you get into that, if I may ask?
How did I get into like vibration?
Oh, I don't know. Just like starting to really like either take the classes or like start implementing into your life.
Sure. My biggest inspiration, I feel like, was just really wanting to. Well, I don't know. I've always been a person who has been very fascinated by like nature, very fascinated by natural or naturopathic medicine. When I lived in Washington, I would go out and like forage for mushrooms and plants and just like find things that I could like go home and cook. And I found like a lot of fascination in being able to just explore my natural environment and just be more connected with the earth in that way. And I think after I did the Columbia, part of being on the river and paddling every day for the better part of 60 days is just that you get like repetitive motion injuries. And so I had like some tennis elbow, some nerve damage in my finger, and then just some like numbness in my like grip strength was pretty much like next to nothing. And so I saw it. After that experience, I saw acupuncture, and with the help of acupuncture and some physical therapy, I was able to like speed up the recovery of just that whole process for those injuries. So that was my first exposure, I guess, to acupuncture medicine. And then it wasn't until probably like in 2020 I reconnected with some extended family of mine, and my great granduncle was or my granduncle was as an acupuncturist and chiropractor in Portland, and so he just kind of like through reconnecting with him, just very inspiring to like learn about more of my family history, and then just be really inspired with his story about how he got into acupuncture. And after hearing that, I kind of like was immediately like the light bulb went off, and it was just very inspiring.
Cool. I love those moments.
To just like want to pursue that as like a career, as a profession, as a way of life, and just continue to take that on. It's been very like, I feel like it's been a big part of like just my whole life is just pursuing naturopathic medicine, connecting more with an understanding of self, and how to be your best self, I guess. So and then the vibrations and frequency has been like a big part of where I think my focus has been going towards, connecting with like microcurrent frequencies, and then like light wavelength therapy, sound. When you think about it, everything's like a vibration or a sound. So everything's some type of wavelength that our body connects with and receives back, and then we also in turn put off an energy, which you were talking about earlier with the concerts. And that's like that heart coherence that I think is being studied more and more as like, in our kind of more as we kind of get I think our generation, our world kind of becomes more like attuned or reminded of like how powerful like just vibrations and wavelengths are. We use wavelengths as a weapon for like microwaves and technology, and yet we don't understand how we can also use those things for good. And I think that like a lot of the work that acupuncturists are doing is also for that healing, for that using those wavelengths, connecting with those frequencies, and finding out how to fine tune that for healing and for regenerative health. There's a lot of research. I went to a talk earlier this year, or towards the end of last year, that was about laser therapy and just the growing technology of that, and talk about how that's like the new wave of being able to prevent Alzheimer's disease is by sticking a laser on your head. Like a set of laser lights. And just like running it across your head. And that's sending those wavelengths shooting through your dome. It's just like that's your way of creating healing and preventing Alzheimer's. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. I think that throughout history and like reading and even getting to know certain people that have understood this stuff hundreds, if not thousands of years ago internally, I think that in evolution of the human species, we're kind of trying to create this stuff externally, with like the lasers and everything else, when really we can create those internal thoughts with sound and vibration to heal ourselves from the inside out. And of course, there's not a lot of people that have studied and understood certain things like the evolution of yourself through finding your way through all these different homeopathic like remedies and in nurturing yourself and through nature and sound and finding the evolution of yourself and you know, through acupuncture and medicine, and there's not a lot of people that seek that out, you know. So I think a lot of times that there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I want this, but then there's like, oh, we have to create lasers and all this other stuff externally to like make it happen, you know, from the outside in. But I think really like it's all in here, you know. It's just different ways and different teachings. One of my questions for you is like, I'm hearing, you know, when you say like the light bulb went off and you had that like kind of epiphany like moment, do you think like everything in your life was kind of leading up to that? Because it feels like in a lot of ways, and for myself as well, like when you tried this and then you kind of like took a different direction and you gave everything up and then you went and did this and you pushed yourself to certain limits to find what it is that works best for you. Do you think like and everything that you were trying to do kind of led up to that, but it took you that time to find what it is that works best for you? Does that make sense? I'm sorry, that was a lot.
No. I think it does. I think it does make sense. I think that it did. Like, I think everything leading up to that moment, where that light bulb moment, I think obviously, you know, it in a way it had to take place because it did take place. And so I'm very much a believer in like that divine timing. That everything is just
perfect.
Divinely
That's a
guided,
great way to explain
perfect timing. I'm also just like a big believer that you receive what you believe, and so your perception on the world essentially is what shapes your reality, and that's what gives back to your reality. So that perception of however you believe the world to be, that's exactly what the world is going to give back to you.
Yeah.
And I've been a big believer of that ever since I kind of started to like really dive into that and just really recognize that how easy it is to just shape your programming each and every day from the time you wake up. It's like Joe Dispenza, I think, talks about how over 90% of the thoughts you wake up from the time you wake up are just repetitions from the day before. And so it's just like, you know, it's like, what are you really trying to shape with your world, and how are you really trying to incorporate these certain ideals? And for me, that's just like gratitude is the attitude. And,
that's beautiful.
You know,
I like that.
I just have been really, ever since I just been trying to incorporate that. And I don't know if this had really, I think this kind of sidetracked from your question, but.
Oh, no, not at all. No, it's great.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that those are just very profound things that I found to really help shape where I am today, and like shape the paths that I choose to take. I think for acupuncture, it was really powerful because at that time I was really wanting to expand my knowledge. I had left teaching for at that point a few years, and I was just like looking for something to really dive into to like expand my knowledge. I feel like I'm a student of life and I love learning. I don't necessarily like the whole idea of going to institute for the loans, and that was a big push off for a while.
Yep.
But when I really got inspired to pursue medicine, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. The loans don't matter. The finances don't matter, because everything's going to come in its perfect time.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, I had a friend who said, what does he say? He said, you can always make more money, but you can never make more time. You know, and that's just a very profound statement. You know, it's like the time it takes to go to school and to get those skills. What is the value of that compared to the actual like monetary, tangible value? I think the skills that you learn and can apply, you know, to expand your knowledge and to be able to continue to apply that and to generate healing for others and yourself, I think is like the biggest thing you can do. So
yeah, for me, and I'm sure for you, it sounds like for you that's definitely it. But I always want to convey to the people that are listening too, like when you have those moments where the light bulb goes off, don't ever pass that by. You know, I think I've heard from other people too. They're like they come to those like apex moments within themselves, and they have those really like epiphany moments where they're like, oh, I feel it, like I should make this shift, but I'm so stuck in whatever it is that I'm doing, like I just can't do it. You know what I mean? And it's like it's redirecting that energy and having the faith within yourself to know that, like you said, it's gonna return back to you. Like you can't be afraid of the certain aspects of society's placement of like the money and the loans and all this other, because I've been right there too. It's funny because I actually lived in Portland, Oregon for quite a while. I went to school there, and I was actually a TA and you know all that kind of stuff too growing up. And I moved up there to become a child psychologist. So I was like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. And then I was so taken back from different aspects of meeting certain psychologists up there that were like, hey, you seem like a great guy. Like, are you sure you want to do this? And then like understanding like the full dynamic of everything that's involved in creating that. It didn't seem like it was right for me. But the profound thing and something that obviously I want to convey to people listening is the fact that even though like I didn't do exactly that, it didn't stray me away from like the overall energy I was like striving towards, which was helping people, helping myself, family, friends, and obviously creating something like this it's like a shift. You know, you're like, maybe this isn't right for me, but I absolutely love doing this, and I love the nurturing aspects of it. So I need to redirect that energy so that I can find what's going to work best for me. So like when you have those moments, those profound moments within yourself, it doesn't always mean like it's not going to work, or you know, like I need to change my complete like view on it. It's more so being malleable or flexible enough to know like, hey, maybe this isn't right for me in these aspects, but if it internally makes me feel great, then I need to pursue in some way or another, you know. And I think that's beautiful that you did too, but it was leading up to all of that, and you can look back now and realize that all those different steps that you were taking were leading to that pathway. It's just kind of bobbing and weaving and trying to find what's going to work best for you. And I love those types of stories,
Yeah.
you know, because I hear so many stories where people are like, oh, I just couldn't do it. And you're like, oh, but do you love it? And they're like, yeah, I love it, but, and you're just like, oh, then go after it. You know what I mean? Because it's what makes you feel like in here. And like when you're finding that nurturing, loving spirit for yourself, and you're able to, you know, allow that to radiate onto others, the universal law to me, I believe, like you were saying, is that it's going to return to you. Like, don't look at the loans, don't look at all the other things that can bog you down from pursuing your dreams, because the universe will give that back to you at some point, you know. And it may not give you back the things that you're like absolutely definitively wanting, maybe not the money aspects, right, but it'll give you back other rewards to let you know that you're on the right path for doing things for yourself.
Yeah.
So I love hearing, you know, stories, and you know, it's not always easy, right? I mean, like, it sounds like some of the things that you've been through and like finding yourself and leading up to those moments and having given up certain careers too. Like, I've done it many times in my life where you look back and you're like, oh man, that moment was hard. Like, I'm giving up so much of what I worked towards, like being a professor. You know, I'm sure that like moment where you look back and you're like, man, that wasn't an easy decision, but look where I am now. You know, so I think like stories like you're conveying, you know, can really show other people that those pivotal moments of making decisions aren't the easiest, but it's also, if you're following your path and allowing your soul guides or your spirit guides to lead you down where you need to be, then you need to be intuitive enough to listen to yourself and follow that path. So
for sure, yeah, I think it's definitely like picking a path and just sticking to it. I think is also a big thing as well. You know, it's just like finding a passion and then allowing that passion to really just embody yourself, I guess, because it's like a lot of those things that you pick out as a passion. I feel like you get started, people pick out like, this is going to be my new passion, this is going to be my new thing, and you start it, and after 2 weeks you're like, oh man, this is hard, this actually takes a lot of time. And you're like, I'm just going to give up on this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I feel like that's, you know, that's a very common, that's a very human thing to be in, you know, confronted with, and just be able to, but like finding a way to like push through those hard times of like where things get a little more challenging, or when they get like a little bit more boring or whatever, is really important. I think that like some of the big lessons I think from being on the Columbia was just like how to continue on, and how to be like, it really taught me about my integrity and how to strive to be someone who says that when they say they're going to do something, that they can go out and do it. And I think that for me, it was like, spent that 9 months of preparing and saying, I'm going to be on the Columbia. And then being on the river and just being, some of these days were just so long, or just, it's
Yep.
just, some days you literally would be out on the water and you'd pretty much go backwards the whole day. So on, in certain parts. So it's just, you kind of make those decisions of just like, okay, I'm here to do this. I'm on a mission for myself. And that was my cause when I was on the river. I think people would ask me, what's your intention? Do you have like a cause, or are you doing it? And I was like, my cause is because, like, just because I'm capable, I have the capacity to do it, because I want to learn something from myself and from the world, and just really to take that time. Um, and then also just going into school, like, it's smart to go in there and not just go in with I guess the assumption of debt or anything, but just to know that you're going to be able to go through it. And I don't kind of lost my train of thought, but like, just, yeah, all the things.
Yeah, it encompasses a lot, and it, obviously with the schooling that you're doing, it's kind of like the same thing. There's going to be parts that are very arduous, others that aren't, others that you feel like you're going backwards. Because with Chinese medicine especially, there's going to be different aspects that you're going to be good at, others that you're not, that you're feeling like you're going backwards or up the stream. But it's kind of like the same thing, and that's the great thing about life and being human, is that you can integrate all these different aspects and see them very uniquely the same. So do you ever feel like you're gonna have a moment where you decide to do something like this again, or very challenging to get to know more of yourself?
I feel like I do little things like that every day, honestly. I mean, I feel like, that experience really helps me to be able to like set goals and like just strive for them and just do the nitty gritty. I feel like I connected with a lot with, like, The Alchemist, if you've read that book.
No, I haven't.
It's just about a boy who has this vision to go see the pyramids, and so he every day is like striving to go see these pyramids, and so, and it takes him years to be able to go do. And it's just like having that goal, I think, and just like seeing that day to day life doesn't necessarily stop, and you still have to be able to do the day to day actions. But having those big goals in mind, having those grander visions, I think is really helpful for just being able to, have that intention of like, why am I here, and being able to create your own intention, is, I think, great. I think one of the things I wanted to bring up was just like how, or come back to, was, like, dropping all of like my education, just like, or like my being a teacher, I guess, change those life shifts. And it's like funny how life comes back around, and like I find myself working as a teacher right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a
It's a
substitute
great point.
teacher, and they just come, those things that you feel like you got to let go for whatever that period in your life. You let go for a period of time, but sure enough, you find yourself picking up those where you left off, I guess, and just kind of like finding ways to reintegrate yourself into those fields or into those, aspects of life.
Absolutely, that's a really great point. I mean, I've done that so many times in my life where, I've so I obviously I didn't go become a child psychologist, but then it redirected me towards other things, and then I think it also led to me like meeting my wife also, which was like one of the greatest blessings in my life. And it is kind of like when you look back and you see that like interwoven path, and you're like, wow, I didn't do that, but then I decided to use a lot of those same tools and become like a hypnotherapist, and then a life coach and all this other stuff, and then it led to me meeting my wife, which is like, oh, now it all makes sense. You know what I mean? Like looking back on it all, feels like when you're in the midst of it, you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, should I be doing this and everything like that? But circling all back around, like you were saying, that like cyclical like process. I've integrated so many aspects of the tools that I've learned and gained, and use them for everyday life and talking with people, inspiring people, doing this obviously, but then just like starting businesses and stuff like that. I'm able to communicate better, my approach and my transparency for things, as opposed to being more like a businessman and being like a little bit more coarse with how I approach things, with which other people wouldn't like necessarily. And because I've been able to gather all these tools throughout my life, I see the purpose of it now. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, this makes such perfect sense now. But leading up to it, sometimes you're like, oh man, what the hell am I doing? Like this doesn't seem right. And then to stop a career in its path, and then be like, oh, am I really gonna do this? And I've done it even with my wife a couple of times, and it's intense to have those moments where like, should I be doing this? Like, because the money's nice or this, that, and the other, but really life is all about what's in here. Like what are you waking up to every day? Like what are you perpetuating and nurturing yourself and your lifetime? And then for me too, a lot of the changes, which you'll find out here soon, becoming a dad, is also like making those decisions so that you're feeling good, so that you can radiate that onto your child as well, so that they see you happy. And that was like a big importance for me as well. Is like I wake up every day like today. I'm like, I'm excited for today because I get to do this. I absolutely love it. So like at breakfast this morning, I was telling my daughter, I was like, oh, I get to do this today, and I get to meet this guy, and like who knows where it's gonna go, da da da.
Yeah,
And she
sure.
gets to see my excitement with the process. You know what I mean? And I think so much of so many people, like when their kids get to see like the grueling wiring of the going to the cubicle every day, it's like they see the they read the energy, they see the presence, and then the facial everything, and it's like, oh, here we go again, and it's like they have to see that, and they're like, oh, I have to do that one of these days, and you're like, you're already plugging in those wires for them slowly to let them know, like, someday you're gonna have to make money, and and those types of things. And then like for my daughter, she's about to be like 10, and she's already picking up on all those like little nuances of things. Well, of course they do, from the very get-go, but I mean, she's really starting to understand like the intricacies of work and making money and stuff like that. So I really feel like she's already starting to understand, like, oh, one of these days I'm gonna have to do this, but it's gonna be a fun and exciting thing, right?
Right.
So I'm really trying to make sure that she gets to see me in those moments and enjoying myself and everything.
Sure.
And my wife's about to do a transition in her whole like workspace right now, and it's just like an evolution of self, through making money through this society, which obviously is difficult because we live in like, a very difficult place to live.
And a lot's going on.
A lot's going on all the
Yes,
time,
all the time.
making the best of it, and
For
then
sure.
and just trying to stay positive. I think that's always a difficult one too. A lot of, well, I wouldn't say always, but with being bombarded by so many different aspects of what's happening right now, can be definitely difficult. Being a father, and just you'll find out here soon, like, and well, I'm sure you already do in a lot of different aspects, but you don't want to even be around your child when you're radiating like doubt and worry, and you don't like you don't like want to even be around them. Or at least for me, I'm sometimes
Sure.
I'm like vibing with somebody that's so like in tune with those things. Like, you need to change your overall like vibe before you start interacting with them and stuff like
totally
that.
Can understand that. I connect with that so hard.
And just being close to your partner and everything like that. It's like one of those things that you'll start to find, like, oh man, like, and it, like I've always said too, like, one of the greatest teachers of my life has been my daughter. Like, she's my little Buddha, because she's taught me to reflect so heavily on like how I'm feeling in that moment. Because I'll be like, oh, I'm so stressed out, and then I'll go like towards her, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be like this, and then I'm like, wait, why do I ever want to be like this? You know what I mean? And then you start to like play off that, and you're like, damn, I really just need to stop doing that all the time. You know what I mean? So yeah,
that's so true. That's so true.
It's important, and it's those energetic moments where it's like you can look inward and you just see and feel the vibration of where you're at, affecting all the different parts of your body too, you know, because I feel like with all of our organs and different parts of ourself, like they're all in their own unique frequency, and the second we start putting that off and going in the wrong direction, that's when I think, you know, disease and other things starts, you know, taking
For
place too.
sure, for
So
sure. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've really been learning from this school and this medicine is how strong of an impact our emotions really play on our organs. And
mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, Chinese medicine has known about this for thousands of years. You'd be like,
Yes.
oh, if you're irritable, you're got something going on here, you know, and if you're got worry, you got something going on here, you know, and it's just like, oh, that's very interesting, you know, and it's like I feel like more and more our kind of like I guess Western medical research or knowledge is showing that cancer is caused by stress in the body. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and where we hold our stress, where we carry that, and I feel like I understood that to some degree going into school, but being in part of the practice and just seeing how just taking certain herbs can really just change the emotional state, you know, and not necessarily solve all life's problems, but just give you a sense of clarity and calmness. I think has been a very powerful part of just like understanding the body and our health and how our body expresses itself when it's unhealthy,
Yeah.
you know. Um,
Yep. I think a big one for me too is like when I was younger, like I took a bunch of different courses in India for Reiki, and that was like a huge one for me, and understanding like the displacement of energy too, because the energy fields within the body, and you kind of like if you're in tune with that, you can definitely go through the parts of the body, and they're like, wait, what is this going on right here? And it just feels so out of place, if you will. I mean, that's one way to describe it, but like
sure.
you tend to find people have like little storage packets of like where they put stuff, like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, like we always hear, you know, like people put it in the shoulders or their jaw, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But also I feel people like will redirect that energy and put it somewhere, like, you know, it's like almost like their like little crystal palace of like they'll take that thought or that energy and they'll just store it in some unique place in their body,
Sure.
you know, and then you're like, oh, what is this going on here? And then you press on it and you're like, ow, that hurts. And you're like, wait, what? That's not supposed to hurt. That's your like knee.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or something like that. And they're like, oh my, I didn't even know that hurt. And then it's like you start to like find out exactly what that is, and it's so unique to see how we function, and our body's so good at doing what it needs to, but at the same time, like if you're not aware of all these different little parts of ourself, it's like so important to see people like yourself, you know, to find out these things, because it's just what we do, consciously, unconsciously. But I'm sure you've seen that a lot too.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
do you have like a month or like something specific like that you could refer to, like finding something like or even within yourself. It doesn't have to be like necessarily like a patient,
Sure.
but just like those little things that we store in different places.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I'm just like thinking about like my most recent injury. I guess I had gotten a case of like swimmer's ear. I basically got myself an ear infection with one of those devices that like sprays water into your ear
Mm.
to like help clean it out and irrigate it. And it sprays water in your ear, and I just, you know, it's probably not the greatest idea to
Yeah.
use those things.
Yep.
Apparently, I learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Got the wrong angle and got some water tucked behind my eardrum.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I had some water tucked behind my ear for at least a week, if not a little longer, and that was it was just really rough because it was like I just knew it wanted to come out, and then I slowly just kind of got a little worse, got a little bit more gunked up, and that just having that pain in my ear or having that water in my ear, you think about how much that just affected my whole like mental state. I had such big brain fog during that whole time. I couldn't really think straight. My words were not coming out right.
Mm-hmm.
My balance was off.
Yeah,
You know,
balance is a huge one.
and I was just super irritable, you know, because I mean, I was like my equilibrium was off, but I just was like so much was impacting in just that one little area of your body,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it just shifts your whole mentality. and it's just like, how long is this going to stay in your body? Things like that, you know?
Yeah, I see it with like with older people that like will have a foot pain, right? And then they'll change the way they're walking,
Mm.
and then it change just a one little change with like a toe hurting. They're gonna change the way they walk. Then their like whole like you're saying equilibrium is gonna be off because it's gonna radiate up to so many different parts of your body, and it's like if you don't take care of that one little toe hurting, it's really changing everything.
Right. It's like a butterfly effect.
Yeah, all the way up to the top of your head, and it's crazy to see stuff like that. And that's why, like, I think acupuncture and Chinese medicine is so important to figure out like where that's coming from, because yes, I believe that it can stem further, but I think with the acupuncture, it's so important to one of the first steps to take to kind of figure out what it is that's going on and then redirect that energy back to the flow that it's necessary to get get back to. But it's like we don't realize that like one little hangnail can sometimes a little bit of water in the ear can make all the difference in your entire life. And sometimes we try and shove it away, but it's like that perpetuates itself too energetically, and sometimes it can lead to other misfocused thoughts and energies and anger and frustration, which then leads you down a whole other path
for sure
of your life.
Yeah, because that one area of imbalance can radiate out, and not just to your own body, but to the people that you connect with. You know, if I get something that makes me an infection that makes me irritable, and then I'm irritable to the people around me, that's going to affect my relationships. You know, and that's going to affect the way that I connect with people around me, and that's going to affect their impression upon me. And that will then radiate itself, and it's like I can do my best to like mend those ties, but it's like that healing, you know, that's that healing that needs to happen beyond just like the physical self. I feel like too.
Yeah.
So,
what would you say is one of the more profound things you've learned in Chinese medicine thus far? I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the whole emotions and the connection, that was like a big one for me. That was a big like a real breaking point. Really connecting with just all the ways that medicine can work. How I've been really fascinated by like a lot of these, like I guess quote unquote like ancient ways of medicine, and so I've been really connected with like indigenous medicine. So I've been working with combo for a few years now, connecting with that, and just finding fascination in how working with combo, you know, one of the big things. Are you familiar with combo?
Yeah, you might want to explain it.
Working with like the frog, the Phylomedusa bicolor, the secretion of the frog. One of the big key factors is it works as like a purgative. It works to induce vomiting and just to kind of clear out the body. And one of the things that going into being in school, you learn that like one of the 8 principles for like healing or creating healing is one of them is through vomiting, another through sweating, you know, through downward movements of the bowels, and other things like that. You can generate healing. But it's just interesting that like so much of our culture, I feel we kind of strayed away from like the idea of vomiting.
Oh yeah, it's a negative. There's something wrong with you if you're vomiting.
If you're vomiting, there's something wrong. But yet that's the body's like instinctual way to kind of create healing. You know, it's like such a natural part of like when you're growing up and you are partying and drinking alcohol, your body's natural tendency to purge up all the alcohol that you've drank.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very cleansing experience. So kind of connecting with those areas of like of vomiting and just being more accepting and more understanding and appreciative of our body's natural mechanisms to induce healing, I think are very powerful.
Is there anything that you can think of that maybe you didn't expect from learning this stuff too? Like, obviously this has been your path for a long time. Is there anything that like really shocked you that you changed from, or like maybe even helped in your relationship, or made it like a difference outside of what you already thought it would? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of something. I mean, honestly, this has just been, the whole experience has just been so profound, and just like connecting with myself, connecting with like my ancestors. I think that a big part of this for me personally, being of Korean descent, was really just like finding some semblance of connecting with my heritage. I grew up, I think most of my life, not really feeling very connected with my culture or like cultural identity. I kind of feel like I grew up kind of like pushing that away, and so that's been kind of like a new profound like connection that I've been really making, is like connecting with my ancestral roots and feeling a sense of identity and connection through pursuing this medicine, even though I'm not pursuing it the way that necessarily my granduncle or my great grandfather was working with acupuncture medicine. For me to kind of pick up that mantle, so to say, and just to kind of take that on in my own way, I think has been a very powerful way of like just me finding purpose and sense of peace with myself.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have you had any moments of like, I know you can like feel the connection. Have you had anything deeper other than maybe on a spiritual sense, like where you've induced a relationship of connecting with your ancestors?
Sure. I mean, are you talking about like with ayahuasca?
Oh, I don't know. No, I'm just putting it out there. You can translate that to however you want.
However, yeah, sure. I definitely feel like I've had very profound spiritual experiences. I mean, before working with psychedelics, after working with psychedelics or entheogens, however you want to call them, I'm very, I don't know, spiritual stuff is very profound. I don't know. I can go deep into the rabbit hole on spiritual.
Oh no, it's funny because last time Dr. Tasha was here too. Like we touched on it for like a second, and I had to like redirect the conversation a little bit. So I'm like, we could talk about this for the rest of for the rest of the night.
For sure.
But it's one of those things too. It's like I've had those profound experiences with like touching base with my ancestors, and then also like myself through all of that too. And I was just like to maybe not dive deep into it, but just explore a little bit of you know the profound wisdom that comes with it, so that it was able to guide you further in your experience of who you are now, and then also realizing that there was more meaning in everything that you're doing, maybe for reasons that you don't know completely. And that's a beautiful surrender moment too, is like when you have those kind of experiences, you realize there's so much, and you won't ever know the length of it, but just even tapping into that small little bit of understanding the ancestral part of it is such a beautiful thing to incorporate in everything that you're doing, because I feel like it's all interwoven and has purpose. And when you find that like purpose, it drives you further in everything that you're trying to do too, because it gives it more meaning.
For sure.
Right. And I think that's a beautiful thing to convey to people too, is like, we are understanding so much more from the profound experiences with things like ayahuasca. So do you have maybe a little story with something like that you can kind of convey? Cause I'm always fascinated with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just had a bunch of thoughts.
Oh no, I could see your eyes go all over the place.
I don't know. Now we gotta find a place to land. So
yeah, it's all good.
As far as thoughts and all that, like there's so much. I mean, spiritual experiences. It's very profound to connect with oneself and to have that sense of like reset, and to really like come out and recognize like that like our existence here is just, we're here, and we're here for a period of time, and there will be so much more beyond us, you know, and the impact that we can create now as a single speck of human dust, human grade level dust, and we just go out and we connect with other humans, and we can create something amazing. We have that power, we have that light in ourselves. I don't know. I think that for working with entheogens, it's just very like set and setting always is great. thing. I don't know. My first experience working with ayahuasca, I was preparing for a 3 night sit, and um, I was kind of working. I was very intentional with my preparation, so I kind of was kind of helped to do and change my diet for a few months beforehand, and really just to like set an intention. I was like meditating very heavily during that time, or I was at least trying to focus on the habit of meditating every morning and just connecting with my ancestors, my spirit guides, spirit, universe, and just really. And it was interesting. I was setting an intention of. I had this intention of asking for insight beyond sight. And I would ask spirit. I was like, please give me insight beyond sight. And so for about a month, at least a month, maybe 2-ish, 3 months of like intention setting, leading up to this a set of ayahuasca ceremonies. I ended up going in, and during that experience, I had my first night, and then the second night, I was temporarily physically blind in ceremony, and that was a very profound experience to be confronted with that, and to have that sense of I could be blind and I don't see right now, and during that time where I was experiencing that blindness, I was like evaluating. I was like looking at like how this would impact my life, and I was just really just coming to a sense of like peace, and just being like, how is this going to impact my ability to practice medicine? How is this going to impact my ability to get home?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's fine. It'll be okay. I'm gonna figure out a
That's
way.
great.
But I did
Intense.
spend a good chunk of that experience just sitting in that sense of I had no sense of vision. And when I just remember when ceremony was coming to a close, and that vision came back, and I was like, I can see. And I just was very, I felt very blessed, and I just was very grateful to have my sight and to have connected with, the medicine in that way, to be in a space where there was no vision, but you could still see lights. Because even during that experience, I got to a point where I was seeing like little energy channels flow. I felt like and I felt like being blind is gonna enhance my ability to work with acupuncture, and improve my ability to understand chi and the way the energy flows through the body. And so I was very like at peace with that.
Yeah, and what taught you surrender too. I think that's a huge one that I've learned definitely in my life a couple times with experiences like that and near death experiences and everything like that. You gain so much from the letting go as opposed to holding on to things. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people tend to do that. Through the ego is to try and take control of certain aspects in their life, death and loved ones and all different aspects. And I think when people try and like hold on to those things, there's so much that can be learned from the release and letting go. And I think you found that also, and probably a lot of healing through it too, because you surrendered and realized that you're going to make it work no matter what. And to realize that is pretty profound, because there'll be so many times in your life you're going to have to confront that. You know what I mean? Whether you like it or not. It's one of those things where you're like, there, in every day we're always confronted with something, and the realization that your things are going to change. They might be for the best, and they might not. But as long as you like surrender it to it, knowing that you're able to push through it in those types of moments. It's funny to me because when I hear that, I sometimes think that we're always doing that. It's just like when you're so induced and you're so in touch with it, it's like you're having those moments all the time, but you were so connected to that moment that it was so profound. But sometimes it's like we're having those little things throughout the day that we're not always uniquely like aware of. you know. But when you're much more induced and like you're only focusing on that, you're having those experiences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like it's not everything. You know what I mean? Because we have this in every moment. You know what I mean? And
No,
in
for
that
sure.
moment, it was just that. You know, so it was the world to you. You know, in that unique experience. But that's cool. I've known one other person to have an experience like that where they went completely blind. So that's
Wow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's heavy. I can't imagine having to do that. But I've also had experiences deep in meditation. I'll share an experience. I've had a deep meditation experience where I was meditating for numerous hours, and I actually came to a point where like I was meditating and I could slowly see like my hand disappear and then my arm and then like my body and then my body started like slowly going away and then I couldn't really see myself but I could see everything else around me but I could feel the part of myself that I was connected with thinking that I was actually going away and getting nervous and scared but then also allowing my higher self to tell that part of myself that it's okay. This is just what you're learning in this process, and can't be like totally freaked out or whatever. But it was a moment where very profound that I kind of just faded away.
Sure.
You know, and it was really scary in the human aspect of what I was feeling inside of my body, even though I couldn't see it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was. I could definitely understand in that moment, like not seeing and having to be like, okay, this is it. Like you know, from now on, I'm like blind. That's intense.
Yeah, there's definitely like a level of like there's a balance of like resilience and flexibility that your mind has to be able to maintain in order just to be able to continue on with life, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel I was just reading earlier today, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was some sort of Taoism quote about just flexibility and like how the mind, you know, being flexible in the mind is really what like the leaves of the tree. You know, if you look at leaves on a tree, the flexibility of them shows that they have life. And when they start to become brittle, that's when you know that things are coming towards an end.
Mm.
So it's like when our mind, so with our mind, as our minds become more rigid and stiff, we become more inflexible, and that rigidness can lead to our ultimate demise. So.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm the avid like gardener. You'll see like from the outside of my yard, but it's just so funny too because I think it was like a week ago. I went up to a tropical tree that we had outside, and I went up to it and I just like touched it at one of the branches and wasn't flexible anymore. And I was like, oh, I can tell you're going. And I was like, come back, you know. But it's like you're saying, I could tell that that flexibility wasn't there anymore, and it's getting more rigid because we've had like too much water within the past like 2 months. And I was just like, oh darn, like you know. But just like you're saying, it's like just with like us too, and being flexible too. Like I see people that like move around and are so rigid, and it's just like the tree. You look at them and you're like, oh, if you're just like if you're that way, there's only so much lifespan in this body left, you know, to live. But yeah, it's a really good insight and metaphor, for sure.
Yeah, all those experiences where our body experiences a certain amount of healthy stress, but also being able to be there's that balance, I guess.
Yeah, like everything we've discussed a lot of different balances today, but for sure, I mean it's necessary to have certain things throughout the day that challenge you. You know, that you create that flexibility within yourself, and then also externally doing stuff that you know, like the paddleboarding and everything like that. Because man, that stuff that makes you strong.
For sure.
Also,
well, and just as you were talking about with the snowboarding, you know, it's like having to weave and you have to make quick decisions when you're snowboarding.
Yes.
Skiing, you know, so and then that just being able to maintain that movement and momentum, I think, is good for the brain.
Yeah, I haven't been paddleboarding in quite a while, and I miss it. It's funny because in part of us moving up here, I sold so much of my stuff and like all my paddle boards and for all different reasons, which we won't get into today. But I miss it because one thing with paddleboarding that's so different from like surfing is like when I started paddleboarding, I could feel like the muscle fibers in like my baby toe, because you're using so much of your whole
Right.
body, you know, and then especially if you're like paddle boarding and then going over big waves and stuff like that too. Oh my gosh, it's a whole
Yeah,
nother
those little
experience.
micro muscles
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
being activated.
Oh my God, you feel it. Like I felt parts of my body that like I've always been pretty athletic throughout my entire life and done many different types of sports. But for whatever reason, like paddleboarding to me like was a overall body experience where I was feeling parts of my legs and my feet and different parts of my core where I was like, God, I've never felt this ever before, and it's such a unique sport because I've done a lot of different ones, and it's that one that really got to me. You know, especially first learning it because I've been a surfer my entire life,
Sure.
and then doing that, and then coming back, and then being like a wreck. You know, like head to toe, like a wreck with everything, and it felt so good because I love that feeling. But man, I can imagine like being 50 days on the water doing that, you were probably trashed by the time you're done. Like hands,
just hands were numb. Like my hands were like couldn't maintain the shape. Like they basically wouldn't go into a fist.
Ooh.
Like they were basically locked in like a holding a pole, I guess. So it's like permanently locked like this. And if my hands actually fell into a grip, like if I fell asleep and I slept on my fingers, they would be locked shut and I'd like trigger finger really bad and I'd pry my fingers open.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
That's intense.
That was unpleasant.
Oh,
but
that's incredible. I've always, like, I've done certain things, like, in my life where I've done, like, treks, like, big treks and stuff like that, but never something like that. And I still want to, like, where I know that I'm going to push myself and learn something through the overall experience, but, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely. I think everyone should have some sort of experience where they push their limits, and they should really like take calculated risks, obviously, but like really like doing something that is going to get you out of your element, and really just pursuing those passion projects. I think are like you learn so much from pursuing those.
Yes.
And it's usually like those areas where it's like the most challenging that you're just like around the corner from like the most beautiful view, the most profound experience ever. And yeah, I mean, I spent a good part of my early 20s. I feel like just trying to fill myself up with those, and so I experienced hitchhiking. I was and just would try and do go to different countries and just to experience and just to see. It's like the journeys or the destination's not the journey or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it definitely is. Yeah. It's like it's important. I actually just did a post recently. I make little posts here and there, like on Instagram, just for like little points of like inspiration. But that was actually one of my posts recently, which is kind of funny. It's like calculated risks, knowing yourself and what your body's capable of, but also pushing yourself outside of your own boundaries to realize what you're capable of doing is so necessary for our mind, right? Because sometimes we get so bogged down with what we're doing on a daily basis, we don't realize we're so much more capable of branching off to other things, and then also physically knowing that we have so much capability of doing so much more than what walking around or doing whatever menial stuff every day. We're capable of doing great things no matter what age.
Yeah.
And I see people all the time, all the way up to their 70s, like starting at their 70s and then literally branching off and trying new things and then being great at it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it doesn't matter what age you are, like what you, if as long as like you have the capability and the know-how, go for it. It's so necessary to get to know yourself and to inspire others too. And that's kind of like what this whole talk is about. I think a lot of what points we've made today is just like kind of pushing yourself outside your boundaries to create inspiration for yourself, because when you know you can do that, it allows you further in life to take those risks within yourself to be like, I can do it. Like I've already done it. Like look what I did. Like you had that experience where you pushed yourself and you did it, and you got a lot from it, and then you'll continue to do that. Like you said, every single day you wake up. It's a perpetuation.
Really
right?
is. Really is. Yeah.
It's like that little drop in the cup every single day of like making the momentum and doing what you're what you're needing to do. I always said the snowball effect. You know what I mean? Because you're on top of the mountain, you create the little ball, and that becomes an avalanche.
Sure.
You know, and that avalanche is like the greatness of what you're trying to strive for, and it's fully there for you. You just got to start with something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's true. It's true.
But I don't know how much time we've done. Almost an hour and a half.
Okay.
Already.
Oh, well.
But yeah, we can keep on going if you want.
Sure. I mean, I don't have anywhere to be. If you had any other things you wanted to talk about, or
I'm good at talking.
Okay.
So
I can do a little bit longer. Sure.
I wouldn't mind. I don't know if we would want to do it on video, but I would really love. You said you brought some instruments.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah.
With you today. If you don't mind, I would love to like share those. We could either do it on video or like I have like one of the reasons I got this house was the fact that it has like such good acoustics in that room.
Okay.
So anytime I just go in there, we keep it really simple, like a simple table and everything like that. So whenever we're playing something, it's just like it radiates through the entire house, which is great with instruments, but it's not great with like yapping dogs or like little kids running around when you're wanting quiet, you know. But it's great for like for little things like that. So I always love hearing new things, and if you'd be willing to,
I'd love to. Yeah,
I would really like to do that. So let's do that.
Okay.
And then
how would you like to set up?
Yeah, we'll set up there, but let's wrap it up here, and I'll like to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Wrap this up on this side of things.
Awesome.
And if there's anything you want to throw out there as far as like any way people want to communicate with you or anything like that, you could definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty hard to find. But I keep my Instagram private, but
yeah, no, it doesn't have to be or any other means of like total attunements or anything like that you want to throw out there. Now's the time.
Well, I mean, yeah, live the best life, and you know, if you received anything in this message, just receive that you receive what you believe. You know.
Cool.
Everyone's a human, just being.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah, for
beautiful.
Sure.
All right, let's go play some music.
Yeah.